Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be with us this afternoon to discuss this new charter for healthy volunteer trials. A word of disclaimer and a short explanation on why I took an interest in healthy volunteers. In the early 1980s, I went to the UK to train in clinical pharmacology. I was therefore a junior investigator in the team at the time, and because I was also 25 years old, from time to time, I was a healthy volunteer. Then later on, I went back to France, where I got a proper training in clinical pharmacology and was again, but this time a proper investigator in phase 1 clinical trials. And then I moved into the pharmaceutical industry, where I was for many years a sponsor of multiple trials involving healthy volunteers. And the reason why I'm saying this at the moment is because during those years, I saw how this field evolved dramatically from a small cottage industry, which involved mostly industrialized countries and basically large cities, teaching hospitals and medical students. Most often were healthy volunteers. Medical students are their friends who just needed pocket money. This situation evolved radically over the past 20 or 30 years into a global, very profitable business, which involves pretty much all countries in the world and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of healthy volunteers. So we started this initiative called VolRethics, which is quite a mouthful, which stands for Volunteers in Research and Ethics, with the INSERM Ethics Committee in 2022. INSERM is the French National Institute for Medical and Scientific Research, and you can see the logos of the institutions which joined our efforts very early on. Our objectives initially were to, first of all, understand what were the ethical and scientific issues pertaining to healthy volunteers, and also to build a repository of best practices. We thought probably there are places in the world where people are doing good things, so let's collect them. What are they doing to safeguard the rights, the well-being, and the safety of healthy volunteers? We set up early on an international steering committee. You can probably not see all the names, but you can see the variety of countries where we found people willing to help us. A large number of countries, except for Australia and New Zealand. At the moment, we do not have anyone, and we would gladly welcome some of you. And we also have a lot of support, primarily from European institutions, but also from bodies such as the UNESCO and the WHO. What have we learned since we started? The first thing which we realized was that, in fact, there was a lot of different situations where healthy participants, I'm using this term on purpose, healthy participants, are involved in research. There are the usual interventional studies with pharmaceuticals or vaccines we are all familiar with, also medical devices, biologicals. More interestingly or more surprisingly, environmental exposure studies. I didn't know personally they existed, involving healthy people, and also controlled human infection challenges, which were very much discussed at the time of the COVID crisis. But then there is also a very, very large variety of situations where healthy people are required for research purposes, with or without collection of biological samples, but without intervention. Things like physiology, human social science studies, behavioral sciences, and so forth. And we thought, if we try to deal with all ethical issues pertaining with such a large variety of situations, we are going to get lost. And this is why we decided to focus our attention on a narrow definition of healthy volunteers. So for us, we mean, when we say healthy volunteers, we mean people who take part in interventional clinical trials with medicinal products when there is no potential direct health benefit for the participants. And we do this because we believe that these are the situations where healthy volunteers are exposed to the highest potential risks of harm and exploitation, as I will discuss in a minute. Looking at how people are protected, healthy volunteers are protected among research participants, we turn to the good clinical practice, the CIOMS guidelines, the Declaration of Helsinki, and we realize very quickly that various terms are used to describe research participants, but pretty much every time something is said, this is about patients. It's not about healthy volunteers. These guidelines have been built around the needs of patients in research. And even though the recently revised Declaration of Helsinki now states that the declaration applies equally to patients and healthy volunteers, in fact, when you read through it, you'll see quite a few very specific articles about patients, but none about healthy volunteers. We looked also at laws and regulations, and we realized that in fact only very, very few countries have specific regulations in place for healthy volunteers. And this is illustrated by how few countries have national registries to ensure adherence to washout period between trials. France started this a long time ago. The UK has got a similar system, Malaysia more recently, and we know that Morocco and Japan are working on this, but these are the only countries we know about where there are specific laws to protect healthy volunteers. Pretty much all countries in the world have got regulations to protect research participants, but again, very, very, very few have got specific features for healthy volunteers. Why does this matter? For us, it's important because, and this is the most important slide I can show to you today, is because healthy volunteers are very different from patients in research on three accounts primarily. The first one is that by definition, they are healthy, and therefore their benefit risk balance is radically different from that of patients who oftentimes can expect some direct or indirect health benefit from participation in research. The other issue is that money is involved. Unlike patients, healthy volunteers get money for what they do, and therefore they risk being exploited when they are in situations where they can be vulnerable. And more surprisingly to those of us who thought we were familiar with the field, there is also the issue of the well-being of healthy volunteers. Healthy volunteers, unlike patients, participate in studies with very constrained conditions. Of course, to protect them in the first place, but they are not as free as patients who can oftentimes have access to their relative, their family when they are involved in research. Healthy volunteers are pretty much locked up in facilities where they have no contact with the outside world, where they are submitted to pretty strict restrictions about what they can do, what they cannot do, multiple sampling times, sometimes at night, and so forth. So the conditions to which healthy volunteers are exposed to in research are radically more constrained than those of patients. So these are the three key features which, in our opinion, make healthy volunteers special in research. There have been very, very few publications about healthy volunteers, but there is a handful of publications primarily coming from the United States and a little bit also from the UK, where some people have coined a term that is the research underclass, healthy volunteers as research underclass. This term was coined by Carl Elliott and Roberto Abadi in 2008 publication. And the key message is there is that healthy volunteers are primarily motivated by money when they're enrolled in clinical trials. And the other thing, especially in the US, is that ethical concerns about exploitation are exacerbated by social inequalities. And this has been illustrated very well in the US by an overrepresentation of Black and Latino healthy volunteers in paid clinical trials. So this is the situation. And why do we oftentimes say that healthy volunteers are a blind spot in biomedical research ethics? Why is little attention paid to healthy volunteers? The first thing is that unlike patients, healthy volunteers are not organized to get their voices heard. There are no healthy volunteers associations, whereas there are more and more patient associations that can dialogue with researchers and caregivers. The second thing, of course, is that there are very few severe accidents. This is a very safe business, if I can use the term. We know about two major incidents in the UK and in France. So admittedly, there are very, very few severe accidents, but we do not know about more minor incidents where, for instance, healthy volunteers feel they have not been properly respected or properly managed by the study team. We do not know about some minor adverse events which may still be a problem for healthy volunteers many years later. The other issue is that there are very, very little data that are published on the realities of healthy volunteers. There are reasons for that, which we could discuss a bit later on, but in fact, there are very, very few publications, very few publicly available data on the metrics of healthy volunteers in research. It's hard to say how many trials involve healthy volunteers, how many volunteers are involved. A lot of this information is confidential, so there is a clear need for more data, but this is one reason also why little attention is paid. This is not an area which is much research and which is not much published about. And let's face it, the current system makes pretty much everybody happy. Healthy volunteers get paid for what they do. CROs have a very profitable business doing studies with healthy volunteers. The pharmaceutical companies are happy because they get the data they need to progress with science and also with registration of their medicines. And regulatory agencies get the data they require for registration of pharmaceuticals. Oftentimes, bioequivalence data, for instance, are required to register generic drugs. And this is a huge business, a huge number of studies with healthy volunteers are just bioequivalence studies. Why does this matter? There are many reasons. The first one is, as I quickly said earlier, healthy volunteers may belong to economically disadvantaged groups. And with this, of course, there are ethical issues that are related with that situation. And ethical issues are also related with the risks. The first one is about potential harm. It's never a good idea to give to a healthy person a pharmaceutical compound they do not need. Adverse events are always possible. Also an important idea which I was not very familiar with initially, but which now strikes me as being very obvious. First-in-man studies are designed to detect side effects, and therefore we deliberately expose people to side effects. We want to see the beginning of side effects, admittedly under extremely controlled conditions, but this is why healthy volunteers are needed to detect side effects. There is the issue of potential exploitation because money is involved when people are in situations of vulnerability. And I mentioned also the potential negative impact on their well-being. An important issue also why this is important, sorry for the repetition, is because there are differences between countries. The regulations are not the same in all countries, and this can create problems. And all in all, we feel that there is a reputational risk for all stakeholders involved in biomedical research with healthy volunteers. And this is why we call for an even global playing field for these types of studies. And in June 2024, we published the first Global Ethics Charter for the protection of healthy volunteers in clinical trials. It is now translated into 10 languages. Some people have wondered, why do we need so many languages? It's not because scientists most of the time do not speak English, but healthy volunteers not always speak English, and it's important that they have also access to this charter. So the charter is built around 15 rights, which we feel healthy volunteers are entitled to in clinical trials. There is a first section with 6 articles that basically expresses or explains the overall ecosystem that needs to be in place for healthy volunteers to be properly protected. Then we get into more details about protecting them from harm, physical and non-physical harm. So there are 4 articles about this. And the last 5 articles are about protecting them from exploitation. I do not have time, obviously, to go through each of these articles, but of course the charter is available online. But let me focus for a minute on what are some aspects that could be specifically relevant to you as Human Research Ethics Committee members when it comes to the Global Ethics Charter. So I'm going to take a few articles to illustrate what I mean. Article 2, for instance, states that assurance that healthy volunteers' participation in research is ethically and scientifically necessary should always be ensured. And therefore, we say that one of the things that the Research Ethics Committee should look at is to make sure that the involvement in research is always ethical and scientifically necessary. In other terms, do we really need to expose healthy human beings? Are there not any other way to get the type of data that scientists or CROs are looking for? So we feel that's a question that is very valid for RECs, that they should ask themselves, both about ethical and scientifically need to expose healthy people. And down the line, we also raise this idea that we should probably think along the lines of what has been done for research involving animals, about ways of reducing, refining, and replacing healthy volunteers everywhere this is possible. Of course, this is a medium to long-term objective, but we feel it's a very valid discussion to have. How often can we use alternative methods to get data than exposing healthy volunteers to risks? Article 3 is about adequate representation of healthy volunteers throughout the research process. So we feel that everyone, in particular countries, should encourage the formation of groups representing healthy volunteers for them to be involved in the laws and regulations and guidelines that are designed to protect them. And we feel that healthy volunteers representatives should be engaged anytime this is possible, as are patients, in the design and conduct of trials. Article 5 is most relevant for today's audience. It's about adequate research ethics oversight. We feel that there is a need to ensure that RECs involved in reviewing these types of trials should have the necessary expertise, training, and resources to thoroughly assess what is specific about these trials. We feel that at least some members of the ethics board should understand the risk specific to healthy volunteers wherever possible, and that would be ideal. We feel that there should be at least one representative of healthy volunteers, if not healthy volunteer past or present in person, at least one member of the REC who has made a deliberate effort to be informed and possibly trained about what is specific with healthy volunteers so that they can defend their viewpoint in meetings. Last article I think I've got for you is about informed consent, obviously a very important thing to look at for RECs. So of course the informed consent should be tailored about the specificities of healthy volunteers. We know from the research that has been carried out that oftentimes healthy volunteers are not very interested in the scientific aspects of the study. They just know how much money they will get. So there should be specific efforts to make sure that they get at least some easy to understand information on other things than money aspects. But when it comes to money, because it's so important for them, there should be very, very clear mention on how the financial compensation will be provided, how it will be organized during the study, and importantly, what will happen if a volunteer decides to withdraw, which is their right, at any time during the study. This is oftentimes a very complex point to address, that of what some people call completion bonuses, which means that you get extra money if you go through all the steps of the study until the very end, which is understandable on one hand, but which on the other hand comes into conflict with the right that we keep expressing about healthy volunteers being able to withdraw from a trial anytime they want to. So with this, I will not go into more details, but just to say that the Global Ethics Charter is by no means cast in stone. For us, it's primarily a tool, even though it meant a lot of work for us and for the people who reviewed it. It's for us primarily a tool for discussion. It's a tool for advocacy on what is specific about healthy volunteers. And we feel also it can be very useful for countries and regions to start discussions on what is specific to their realities and what should they do to better protect healthy research participants. So we would very much welcome you to look at the charter and see how it can help you think about what is needed for Australia and New Zealand. A last word about, I've repeated the term vorethics. You may see that we use sometimes uppercase and often, sometimes not. So just to explain you where we come from, we started this vorethics initiative with this complex mixture of upper and lowercase, which led to some confusion, and therefore we have gone for full uppercase now so that people don't get confused about what we should be called. We are called vorethics. But initially, we were just an informal initiative, again, founded by the INSERM Ethics Committee in 2022. We have this international network, which is very informal, of more than 200 people. And our key achievement is what I just presented to you, the 2024 Global Charter. So in July 2025, we founded a legal association, an association called the Vorethics Association, which gives us a formal legal framework to organize ourselves, and very importantly also to enable us to raise funds. We need funds because our key objectives continue to be about advocacy and supporting national and regional initiatives around healthy volunteers. But very importantly, we also want to support research on healthy volunteers' realities, and this requires money. So having this tool now available to us, an association framework, enables us to raise funds and fund some research projects. And very importantly, this is a very important point for us, we clearly want to encourage the creation of support groups of healthy volunteers around the world. I should have said from the beginning that even since we launched the initiative, we have always tried, and oftentimes we have managed to have healthy volunteers work with us in identifying the issues and the possible solutions to protect them better. And of course, healthy volunteers who are involved in the writing up of the Global Ethics Charter in 2024. So with this, I will stop, and I will be happy to answer any question, and any question that cannot be answered, by all means, feel free to write to us, either myself or my good friend Nadina Stadler, who is also with me this morning with you. So again, many thanks. We feel that Australia and New Zealand for us is a part of the world where we don't know much about, and would love to hear from you on what we could do to help you. Thank you very much. healthy, and that guidance is there to tell participants of any health condition. Yes, indeed, this is an issue we address in the charter, which is about incidental findings. So there is indeed a need for clarification. We try to address it through the charter. Indeed, it's a point again that we make in the charter very broad recommendations on what we think should be done, but we refrain from giving too precise guidance, because we feel this has got to be discussed by the people who are on the front lines, and these situations may differ country by country, depending, for instance, on the legal framework, the requirement for compulsory trial insurance in some countries, but not everywhere. So, indeed, it's an important question. Using alternative to healthy volunteers where possible. Yes, indeed. This is something we have just barely started to touch. We feel that these days of artificial intelligence, of in silico trials and so forth, there could be situations where you could spare healthy volunteers. I was struck during my years in the pharmaceutical industry at the number of bioequivalent studies that were required by many countries for national registration of. We feel that some sort of mutual recognition processes should be developed, so that not every country licensing a generic drug requires their own bioequivalence trial and so forth. So we are just starting to address this issue, which is more of a scientific issue than an ethical one, we should say. So it's about finding situations where you could spare healthy volunteers by going through mathematical models, in silico trials, and so forth. So this is a sort of broad idea, but we'd leave it at scientists to discuss. We just want to put the issue on the table, that every time you see a trial on healthy volunteers, you should wonder, is it truly necessary? Is this the only way you can get your data? We feel that should be a logical question to ask.
Thank you, Francois. Now, I believe we're going to hear from Nadina. Are we? No.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Nadina.
I'll just take this off.
And just to let you know, Nadina, you've probably got about 6 or 7 minutes. If that hopefully that's is that sufficient for you?
Oh, certainly. I wasn't even prepared to speak.
Oh, that's fine. A couple of minutes will be fine, because so Sophie's ready and willing. But please feel free to comment on what you've heard.
So because I am so good day again, and thank you for having us at the conference. Because I am one of the 200 informal members of this network, I just wanted to tell you that some of my best professional years were linked to Christchurch, New Zealand, and to Sydney, Australia, where I was doing biomedical research. So I consider our presence here personally amazing, and professionally very, very important, because just as you just said, by naming this session clinical trials in changing times, I believe that in this present times, which are changing, the scientific community remains united there, even though we are going through changing times. I think my colleague Francois has said it all. What I would only like to stress here, that we would like to see our presence here as a start, and possibly a platform for dialogue, for learning, exchange, peer exchange, or community or beyond, to support collaborative actions focusing on healthy volunteer and safeguarding their rights. So we're happy to stay in touch with you at the emails we shared, and once we get our activity developed, also on LinkedIn and others. So we're happy to also answer any questions you might have, and hopefully this is also the start of a long-term collaboration.
And thank you, Nadina. And I think it is absolutely essential. I think that we learn from what is out there already. There's no sense in redeveloping or reinventing the wheel. And I do notice, Francois, that when Doris Schroeder, I think Doris spoke at this conference 2 years ago, I think, and that she gave a great talk as well. So we're already familiar with some of the members of Volar Ethics, but clearly not enough. So everyone online, please take on board that there is a charter for healthy volunteers in trials, and clearly that's something that as ethics committees we should be sort of considering usage of, or at least adoption. I guess, yes, I think it's the start of the conversation, as you point out, Nadina. So thank you very much for adding that one.
Mm-hmm. If I might add just one more word, is that as I've said several times, we lack data, we lack information on what is going on. So if you could encourage your Australian and New Zealand colleagues to publish more on the issue of healthy volunteers. We lack metrics. We raise these issues, but we've got a hard time telling people what are we talking about in terms of numbers and what are the realities. And are Australian healthy volunteers the same as the Japanese ones? We would love to have more data on this. This is why, in fact, we created this association also to be able to raise funds and support this type of research. So the more data we get, the more informed we'll be and the more interesting the discussions we can have.
Thank you so much, Francois. And I think that's a very good reminder to our audience that there's opportunities for research involving healthy volunteers. Okay, Francois, we must move on. So thank you once again, and to yourself.
Thank you.
And